Hey everyone, it's Rob Stanley with the Ecom Wiz podcast. And today my special guest is Chen. He's co-founder of PickFu. Hey Justin, how you doing?
Hey Rob, thanks for having me on.
So today we're going to talk about how to get feedback on Amazon products before they exist. Now, there's a lot to that. And if you've listened to the podcast and a lot of other people, we've mentioned PickFu many, many times on other podcasts that guests I've had on. So I'm actually glad to have you on. But why don't we jump right into it and tell us a little bit about what do you mean by how to get some product reviews before they product even exists?
Yeah, sure. Let me tell you a little bit about PickFu just to make sure everyone knows about it. So PickFu is basically a digital focus group for your Amazon products. So we can get you crowdsourced private feedback on kind of all aspects of the product during the life cycle. So it could be product concepts, variations, listing images, kind of anything. So this is, just to be clear, this is not reviews like you guys do in terms of feedback, but this is private feedback. So what we do is we have thousands of US respondents that we tap into, and we have these short polls, which are basically a single question, and you can upload a couple options like images or text or whatever. And we go out to our panel of respondents and we ask them, like, for example, which bag would you buy, right? And you'll throw up a few different variations. And within 30 minutes, we'll get 50 people to respond. They'll pick which ones they like. They'll give a written explanation why, and they'll also give their demographic information. So this is a lot of data that you can use to make a better informed decision and to give you more confidence into, that $50,000 buy you're going to do from your manufacturer. So that you're not worried about the unsold inventory just kind of sitting there. Or you can use it to optimize your listing images or your listing copy, kind of like any of those things where you just want to make sure, like, you want a sanity check, like I'm putting the right stuff out there. And this is before you're getting actual feedback from customers with your platform. This is all like beforehand, right? Like, so that you can diagnose if you're going in the right direction.
Yeah. So I'll just go over some of the things I've heard people use PickFu for, and maybe it'll strike a chord with some of the people that are listening. So I've known Justin actually quite a while and had many discussions with him. And so I've heard things like coming up with a company name, right?
Yeah.
That's one that I've definitely heard. Coming up with a logo for your company. Maybe even obviously products. I mean, we're talking about products and a lot of A/B testing on products, product design, product features too. I think I heard somebody mention they were kind of looking at an item on Amazon and they were like, oh, this is a good looking item, but maybe we could add these features. Would people be interested in that feature? So I think
actually that one's an interesting one, because we actually see not only products, but doing that. But for example, we have a lot of gaming companies as well. And if they're going to market like certain features, or maybe they're going to put certain features into a game, they might actually put all these features out like, hey, what's important to you, like, in this product or this game or something. And if you put a lot of options for us in one of our polls, we actually ask our respondents to rank them. So they have to do a full ranking of like, oh, here's my first choice, here's my second choice. And that gives you a lot of interesting data to not only shape the product, right? Okay, I'm going to add these 3 features, but those are the features I want to emphasize on the listing, right? Because that's what's important to the customer. And I do want to point out that, like, we do have audience targeting. So if you are selling kitchenware, like, you can target avid home cooks, or you could target by gender or any of those types of things. And we also have like Prime membership as a target. So a lot of the Amazon sellers like to target people who are familiar with the Prime, shopping on Prime and all that kind of stuff. So that really lets you hone in on asking your target audience, as opposed to what most people do is they just ask their friends and family. They ask like their neighbors, or whatever it is. And like that's fine in the beginning, but like that's not necessarily your target audience, right? Like, we have sellers that are guys that are selling like nursing bras or something, right? Like, well, if you're just asking your family or your dad, like, he's not going to give great feedback, right? So you want to ask your target audience. And the other reason it also works for us personally is that, when you start asking your friends and family all the time, they kind of get sick of giving feedback. So, it helps to have a platform where you can reliably get 50 responses in like 30 minutes and you don't have to worry about like no responses, right?
Yeah. And another one I just thought of was packaging too, right? Which I have to say, I think that's like underrated. Like, I think too many people don't realize that you could do some testing on your packaging, and you probably should, because it's going to represent you, right? Like when I order off Amazon all the time. I pull something out of the box. What's that packaging look like? I mean, that's the kind of a first impression. So I think that's super important. And I'm sure you've probably seen that too, right?
Yeah, I think packaging, I agree. Branding and packaging are the two areas that I think more sellers need to be testing on. And that's actually where we have a case study with Thrasio. And Thrasio kind of been making the news for how well they're doing. And every time that they buy a new product line, what they do is they buy FBA businesses and they kind of optimize them and make even more money off them. So what they do is they rebrand, repackage a lot of the products that they buy, and they run all those tests through PickFu just to validate it. And so we have a case study on our website about how they bought a pet deodorizer. I think it was called Angry Orange. And so they had a thesis when they bought it that, oh, this is already doing well, but I bet if we rebranded and repackaged it, like it would do even better. And that's exactly what happened. They ran all those tests through PickFu, and it immediately skyrocketed the revenue. And they were able to add other product lines branching off of it just because like this new branding was so successful.
Yeah, there you go. There's a great point in case. Thrasio, they're a partner company of Feedback Wiz. Obviously, PickFu is also, but they, I mean, are blowing up right now. So if you have a brand and a private label right now, and you're looking for like, what are these big guys doing that maybe I should be doing? There's one for you right there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Justin just told you. So it's so true too. And I mean, obviously, Thrasio, they use Feedback Wiz too. So it's great. I mean, it's great what they do. But so focusing back on PickFu, so we've had actually, quite a few different people on. We've talked about different things you guys do. And then, we are also talking about like, I think crowdsourcing, you were saying, right? Yeah. Tell them a little bit about like kind of how that works.
Yeah, so we tap into this panel of thousands of U.S. respondents, and what happens is we pay them to answer each individual poll. So they're getting a little stipend. Like these aren't people that are, having their content blocked on the web, or it's not like some random ad that they're seeing or anything like that. So like these are people who are opting into it. So they should be doing it with earnestness and giving genuine responses. The other thing that we do is that we run all of their feedback, all of their explanations through machine learning to make sure that their responses are good. And we also have like a human editor come through and kind of like vet all those respondents to make sure that they're earnestly answering the questions. So we really try hard to make sure that the quality is high for the respondents and that they're still fast, because the quickness is something that we like to tout.
Yeah, and you were saying, and just to kind of reiterate, they're like almost every category you can think of, you guys have people for that. So anybody who's listening that you're like, oh, I have this product, it's kind of a unique niche, and a niche market, and they probably wouldn't have one. Oh, I bet you they do. So, drill down a little bit into, I know a few because I've done stuff with you guys, but like you could do age, you could do gender, you could do, how great you guys get down pretty deep, right?
Yeah. We try to get as kind of as deep as our customers want us to get. So a lot of it is driven by customer need. And so some of them, like I said, there's a, avid home cook, or if they're a cat owner, dog owner, like these are really typical ones. A lot of sellers are selling things for those types of people. Wine drinkers, this is a really popular one. Or even like nutritional supplements. Like I was just on a call with Mina, and he was selling his nutritional supplements, and I ran a poll for him targeting people who, take either some or a lot of nutritional supplements, because that's kind of like his target audience.
Did he do the packaging one? Because Mina right now, okay, so Mina's actually a friend of ours too. And Mina's going to be on the podcast here coming up. But I buy Mina's, his electrolyte drinks, okay? And Mina did exactly what you were talking about. He literally threw up on Facebook a couple of like, here's this package or this package. And I'm just like, dude, why aren't you using PickFu? Come on. So it's funny you mentioned him, because he definitely just did that. So it's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. So what were you running for? What were you helping him with?
So
the packaging?
Well, I ran for him was he was trying to decide on whether people wanted powder, pill, or
Oh,
liquid for,
yeah.
I think it was like a nighttime drink for like helping you sleep, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we ran the poll, and it was pills that came out on top because you're going to bed, you just want to pop a pill, you don't want to mix powders and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that gave like a much more concrete answer than posting it to the Facebook group, which maybe if you counted all the responses, like would have centered on this, on the same thing, but at the same time, like those weren't necessarily his audience. Like
Absolutely.
customers, like those are just people he's friends with or following him, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, like I actually had messaged him directly because I got the powder, like a packet of the powder. And I actually prefer personally, I mean, I don't mind, luckily it comes with a little scoop, so you can, it's measured correctly. But I kind of like, there's a company called Noon or None, Nuun, and
Okay.
they have kind of like a disc, and it's maybe a 1/4 inch tall, and it's a disc, and you just drop it in your drink,
Oh, that's
and it
cool.
fizzes up, right? But they got a lot of different. There's a couple things in ingredients wise I'm just not super happy with, and their flavors are a little off. So I was kind of telling him, I was like, hey, you should do something like that. I don't know, maybe it's proprietary. I don't know, but I'm sure it couldn't be really proprietary that you make a pill form or a disc out of your powder. So but I told him it's just kind of nice because it's like I don't mind the scoop, but I always notice like when I close the packet, the powder goes.
Oh yeah,
It
for
kind of
sure.
like poofs out of there, right? Just kind of like powdered sugar, right? Like powdered sugar,
Yeah.
just poof, and it's like you get that little mist of it, and I'm just like, But I actually use his all the time, and it's good
Yeah,
stuff.
but I
So
think it highlights, I mean, this particular situation highlights all the different decisions that go into a product, right? So
mhm.
not only, okay, I'm selling nutritional supplements, right? Like what's the form that it should be? Should it be powder? Should it be pill? Should it be compressed disc that dissolves or a liquid shot? Then what's the packaging it should come in, right? Should it be a bag? Should it be a bottle? And I know that he's going through that decision right now because he has some that are bag and some that are
Yep,
bottles. And if you look at the competitors, a lot of them do have bottles, right? So is that the preferred packaging type? And then obviously, like, what does the packaging look like? I think for nutritional supplements in particular, the packaging is like almost one of the most important aspects of the product, right? Like the
yeah,
packaging almost is the product, right? So when you're visually searching on Amazon for nutritional supplements, like that packaging has really got to stand out and also have like all the information that people expect, right? Like what does it actually do? What are the side effects? How do you take it? And I ran a poll
what's
for
in it?
was
Yeah,
actually I ran a poll that was more of a listing audit where I said, take a look at this listing of one of his products and what are the questions you still have? And so it was like totally open ended. We weren't comparing anything, but we have these open ended polls where they just look at it. And if you ask a question like that, it actually surfaces really interesting things of areas of concern that maybe you need to address on the product or just on the marketing of the product, right? So
yeah,
people were asking like, does this have caffeine? Okay, well that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to add that, but if that's a question people have,
yep,
like what do you mix it with? Maybe it's obvious, but maybe it's not, right? Like,
yeah.
so there's a lot of interesting questions that are surfaced that it's like, okay, like maybe I should at least address this in the, in my copy or in the Q&A or something, right? Like infographic, there's a lot of opportunities there.
That's really interesting because I mean, when I was looking for the electrolyte stuff, I was looking for no caffeine. Is it even though this sounds weird? Like I'm looking for like vegetarian, vegan,
Mm-hmm.
even though probably a lot of them automatically are, but
Yeah.
just being labeled on the
Yeah.
package or
Just put it
somewhere
on there.
on, yeah, it's just like it's that one extra thing that maybe somebody's looking for. But you hit that 100%. Like I didn't even think about the caffeine thing, but I was like, oh yeah, I did look for that when I was looking at different ones.
Yeah.
It's just that's totally weird, but yeah, that's a great example right there. So here's one for you. Well, I know people are going to ask this, and because we've got asked this before, their data. Like if I have, let's say, a prototype, pictures of a prototype, and I'm trying to get information, regarding it, like some feedback, A/B testing or
Sure.
something. What happens? Like, how secure is my information when I go to PickFu and I put up 2 packages and it's it hasn't gone into production yet?
Yeah.
And I'm a little worried, like, oh my gosh, is PickFu stealing my information? Are they giving it
Yeah.
out? What about the people that see it? Now they know that this product's possibly going to be out there. They might go copy it. How does all that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, definitely a lot of sellers have that concern. And we have a lot of big companies selling on or using our platform, not necessarily even sellers, but large Fortune 500 companies. And they obviously have that concern as well. All of our respondents are required to agree to a non-disclosure agreement, and they're supposed to keep all this information confidential. So that kind of covers it on that side. Obviously, people can breach it, but like that's then it becomes a legal issue. And I think so far we've never had an issue where someone has disclosed information or used the information in their own way. But it's private. Like they never see the full results either. So the respondents only see the question, the responses, they fill it out, and boom, like that's it. They can't go back and reference like, oh, here are all the polls that I did, or here's the one I answered. So like once it's done, like it's done for them. So there's no way for them to go back and kind of search through all that stuff.
And they're not seeing other people's, right? They're not seeing other people's responses. So they're just seeing their own.
Yeah, exactly. They don't see other people's responses, and they can't go back to it. And also for the poll results, when you run a poll, you're given the opportunity to make it public, but it's by default, everything is private. So, if you don't share it, like no one else will see it. Some people actually enjoy sharing it, and we give like a small discount for those people who do. And so those are the ones that we show off in our public gallery and that we use publicly as examples, like I can show you later. Because some people want it's free publicity or whatnot, right? Like when we show off their products.
Yeah. Maybe you and I'll have to do one for one of the feedback quiz thumbnails or something for the YouTube channel or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Use that as an example, right? Because I tell people all the time, right? So a lot of people who are listening, if you don't know, I'm actually YouTube certified. I've been YouTube certified for years. One of the things when people come to me and they come ask like questions. So first of all, I don't provide it as a service. I'm busy working at Feedback Wiz, so please don't hammer me with questions. But for a few people here and there, they'll come to me, they'll ask me about a thumbnail, and I'm just like, you should A/B test it. I mean, I don't always get a chance to A/B test it myself, or if the video isn't as important, if it's a podcast, I'm gonna be doing hundreds of them right through the year. So I mean, we're doing like 4 a month right now, and we're booked already through the whole year. So it's like I don't always have time, but I kind of already know what people are looking for in thumbnails because I've done so many of them. But for the people who aren't, or product-based ones, you might want to have an A/B test on your thumbnail for YouTube. And that's a crucial, just like you're already A/B testing kind of your primary picture or your main picture or your packaging. You should do the same thing. If you're doing anything on YouTube, you should check those thumbnails, do some A/B testing on them. Even titles. So titles are huge on YouTube, and it's like titles are huge on everything, not just Amazon. Those are crucial with the keywords. You spend all that time getting the keywords, but maybe you have one title this way and one title that way. A/B test it. I mean, why not? It's so easy to go over to PickFu and just set it up. So so I have a kind of a little bit different question for you. So what is, maybe without necessarily giving it away, what is the kind of most unusual thing you've seen somebody A/B test? Was it a product? Was it something else? I mean, I don't know because again, we just got to talk about confidentiality, but could you maybe give a category that was unusual or something?
We definitely see a lot of interesting adult type products, novels, a lot of interesting romance type novels or guides.
Oh, interesting.
Really,
I don't think I would have thought of that one.
Really interesting adult guides are being tested. Weird type things. I mean, we see a lot of like personal things that are tested. So profile pictures and
I could definitely see that because my wife being a real estate agent.
LinkedIn profiles, that kind of stuff. Actually, so my partner John, actually, when he was naming his son, he had an interesting poll. I don't know if he ever shared this, but he was deciding between a few names, and he ran a poll to ask, how would you make fun of this name? Like, which name could you make fun of the most or something? And then like kind of list out like the, childhood teases just to like minimize the,
that's interesting.
So that was actually a kind of fun one that he did.
That's really interesting because my youngest daughter, we actually came down to two names and we were trying to figure out which name we wanted. And I think, I mean, we didn't go out to the family, and obviously this was before PickFu,
Yeah.
but you know, that was many years ago. But we had it down to two names, and we just kind of, you know, sat there and really kind of like talked back and forth the name before we finally decided. So that's really interesting. That's really interesting. That's a different one besides the adult ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's not far off from a company deciding on names and just trying to like understand like what the implications of, you know, a certain brand name they might be going with, or like, does this evoke like the right, you know, feelings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of a different angle on what you're asking for.
Yeah, for sure. And what kind of, so obviously we talked about Amazon being one that you guys do a lot of A/B testing for. Why don't you tell everybody else like some of the other stuff that you A/B test as far as like marketplaces and platforms and stuff?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not just Amazon. Obviously, like anyone who's selling or anyone who's doing products, we have a lot of people who are selling into retail, and they're, you know, especially focused on product packaging where it makes even more of an impact on the shelf. So you could be selling on Shopify or Walmart or anything, any of these platforms. But outside of product, we have a lot of gaming companies, mobile app companies testing game creatives, game concepts from the very early stages, all the way down to app store optimization around the app icons, the screenshots that are shown. So there's a lot of games, like top selling games that are out there where their games have already been optimized through PickFu. So it's those are really exciting to see, because obviously they don't want to talk about it, but like it's really neat to see them test their app icons and like see that's the one that's doing really well on the rankings. And then we also have a lot of authors. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of self-publishing authors that are testing book titles and book covers, because those are really things that you can't test live. And once you go out with your book cover, like you're done, like it's going on print, and you want to make sure that it's right. We actually had a author, one of our earlier customers, and he came to us because he was working with his publisher, and he really disagreed with what the publisher wants to do for the cover. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to use PickFu. I'm going to prove you wrong. And he ran the poll and he lost. And then he ran it again and he lost. And he did it a few times. And then eventually he's like, okay, publisher wins. Like, I'm going to go with that book cover. And, you know, became like a New York Times bestseller. And so he's happy with it. But his cover was so far off from like what the publisher wanted. And we've got this case study on our blog. And it's just that's the typical response we get from customers, is that I totally didn't think that was the one that was going to win, right? Like whether it's something with a product or a title, it's like you think you might know what's going to win, and then you run it, and then you read through all the responses, like, okay, I understand why, but that's not what I thought was going to win. So it's really important data.
Yeah. So prior to COVID breaking out, I was down in LA, and me and Justin and John and the whole PickFu team were all hanging out together, and they had this really fun thing that they did. They brought these like cutouts, and you put your face in there, and it had different questions on it. So, you know, it could be anything from like who's most hungover. I mean, it was just for fun, but it was to show basically like what PickFu could do. And oh my God, I think I ended up losing like 4 in a row of different ones I was in. So I couldn't win one. So I'll tell you what I'll do. So those that are watching the YouTube, I'll put a picture up right now.
Oh, nice.
Of it. And for those who are listening, I'll just kind of describe it, and the rest of you could just listen. So just real quick. So if anybody's familiar with Bradley from Helium 10, Bradley and I got into this one that we were both in side by side on this picture. And it basically said something to the effect of who would you select in a bar brawl? And I think so Bradley ended up winning, just so you all know. But I think he only won by like a few percent or a couple of votes or something like that. So it was pretty funny. And oh man, the comments were just hilarious. I'll have to see if I can find those. If I can, I'll post those up in the video here. But there were some really interesting ones, like the person on the right, I can't remember who was on the right or left, but is trying too hard or something like that. Remember that? There was ones that like the other guy looks like he would not win or something like that. And then there was just some really random comments. So what we're basically getting at is when you do these tests, you do get a lot of data. You get a lot of information, very detailed. I noticed, people aren't just writing like, I select him. They don't really do that. They actually give you kind of a mini paragraph almost.
Yeah.
Like the reason why I picked this person is he's wearing his sunglasses and he's got a goatee and he looks like, he's mean, that. And So it was like, they'll actually give you a lot of info. So like when you're doing a product or packaging or anything we're just talking about, even apps, you're going to get a lot of detail.
Yeah,
And then you notice something.
our customers typically say that the written feedback is the most valuable part about it. So you may get a winner, like, and maybe it's overwhelming or not, but reading through the explanations is where you're actually going to gain more insight, right? So whether or not you go with the winner, and a lot of times people don't necessarily go with the winner because it's still your decision, right? You may read all the losing responses and be like, well, I think those people are resonating with what we're trying to go for anyways. So like maybe that's what our brand should be about. And so like we're still going to go with the losing option because it's working, right? That's what we want them to feel. So it's really important to read through that. And secondarily, like you get a lot of actionable insight, right? So if they say like it was the color or, a certain wording, then to alter it. And then you run the test again and you see if it's been adjusted. So it's really important to read through all those things and kind of have a checklist of like, what am I going to do next? And what action am I going to take?
Yeah. No, that's true. And it's fun too. I actually we were having a lot of fun doing it. And it obviously costs money to do this, but it's really detailed. There's a lot of info. We were able to like narrow down who we wanted to do it. I think we did kind of a general one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can test. And if you need it, if you're talking millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of a product you're selling, why not spend a little bit of money and test it?
Yeah.
I think I had that conversation with Tim Jordan. Him and he had him on the podcast and we started talking about PickFu, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, why would you not test? Why would you not test for the small amount of money that it takes to do this?
Cool. Yeah. I just wanted to show a few sample polls. I think it's always easier to see it than describe it. But we can start with a few like open-ended ones because I think these are really interesting. And we were talking about getting feedback on products before they even exist, right? So these could be 3D renders, or maybe these could be images from your supplier or images off Alibaba. Who knows, right? Like
samples.
You're just thinking about like, oh, I want to sell quilted waterproof backpacks, right? And I'm targeting females, Amazon Prime 18 to 24, right? That's who they want. So like you can ask for a rating in this situation and you get some interesting feedback, right? So prints are kind of ugly. All right. So white female, 31 to 60 income. Like that's, that's good. Some people think it's adorable. They look sturdy. So I think these comments will help you get a gauge of, a
lot of them keep saying that they love it's waterproof. Yeah. That's pretty good. That's good info.
So talking about the filters I was mentioning before, we could let's see, we could say like we go by like this income range, right? And we'll see that it's a 3.8. We could go. There's not too many people on the higher range.
Not too many there.
Yeah.
Was this based on 50 people or?
Yeah, this was 50, but for some reason it ended at 38. They might have ended it early, which is an option if you're on one of our plans. Like if you feel like it's enough feedback, then you can just kind of end it and we'll prorate the credit back to your account.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So let me see. So this is an example of just like getting feedback on open and listing. So this just opens up the Amazon listing, and it's just a bunch of questions, right? Like how durable, how many times can they be reused? Can you buy it in bulk? How long does it last? These are all really good questions that you should make.
Great question.
Yeah, that your listing answers.
I would have asked with now they got that whole thing with waterproof ratings, right? Like what is it, IP6 or something like that? I can't remember exactly, but I'd ask a question like that, like because if I'm looking at a listing on Amazon, I might want to know, like, is it water resistant or is it, what level of it? Because now they have that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So let's see, that's like a listing type one. This is another one where it's just about the listing, asking what could be improved. And so this is a little bit different where it's asking what aspects of the listing could be improved. And so, some people are saying like talking about the main photo.
Dull colors.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
so what we recommend people do is they kind of read through this and you make like a bucketed list, right? Like 5 people talked about the photo having issue, or 5 people talked about like these questions having issues. And so now you just go back to your listing and just, go down the checklist. And once you address those issues, like you'll definitely have a stronger listing, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we talk about, like I talk on the podcast all the time with like different people, is we always talk about like, okay, you put your product up on Amazon, you start getting the product reviews, right? And people go back. We tell people you should go back and look at those product reviews, especially like the ones that are, let's say, 2-3 stars or less, and look at what are they saying, so that way you could fix it. Like maybe you get a version 2.0. What Justin's basically saying right here is kind of a way to bypass possibly getting bad
Yeah.
ratings on Amazon or anywhere, even if you're selling it through your website, and kind of being able to address some of these questions or concerns before you even get to a marketplace platform. So that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
really good
that's good
information.
that you mentioned that. We're actually working on a customer on a case study, and there'll be more coming out about this in the coming months. But basically, he's coming to us saying, I've got all these negative comments, negative reviews, or returns for these certain reasons, right?
Yeah.
And really frustrating, totally frustrating from a seller standpoint. So what he wants to do is he wants to address certain aspects about the infographic or the copy or whatever. And he wants to specifically address those concerns, right? So now the question that you ask in the poll becomes much more specific, right? Like, does this image address this concern?
Yeah.
And that should cut off people from buying it, like when they shouldn't be buying it. And it should also set the proper expectations, right? So that's
Absolutely.
a really interesting way to tie in like the actual feedback from customers to vetting, like, okay, now here's how I'm going to address it. And I just want to make sure that I am going to address it correctly.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great information. How long, like as a customer, when I run a poll, how long does my information stay there, or the poll, or the results, I guess?
I mean, indefinite, like, yeah,
It's infinite. Okay, great. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, we don't get rid of
Oh,
it.
awesome. Well, great. Let's go look up the one between me and Bradley. No, you probably still have. I can't remember who actually did it. I think you guys were using like a generic account or something like that, right?
Yeah, I'll look it up and send it to you. You can link to it in the podcast notes or
Yeah, I'll do that. It was a lot of fun for sure.
yeah. Let's see. This one was actually just about pricing, which I thought was interesting. We don't see
Interesting.
this too often, but I thought it was interesting because I looked it up afterwards. So first, people were saying like 35, 40, someone as high as
Some saw
70.
50, 70, 100.
Yeah,
A lot of 30s, 40s, it looks like.
yeah. So I found it on Amazon just like actually right before this call, and going for 59. It's kind of like in the middle, a little higher on the range, but like right in the middle there, and seems to be doing
Doesn't
well.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not doing bad. They got an Amazon Choice. They got 192 ratings with,
Yeah,
at least 4.5-ish, it looks like. I mean,
yeah,
that's not bad at all.
yeah,
But it's also, 4.6. So it's also one of those things though, unfortunately, it's probably something you guys can't test. It'd be really interesting if you could do A/B testing on Amazon with like a price range, right? $49.99 versus
yeah.
$59.99. Which one, for that extra $10, and am I selling 100 more a day versus, so that would be real interesting. So that's the thing people need to think about too is, you look at your poll results, and let's say like it didn't look like these people necessarily went with the poll results, because the ones we were seeing were looking more like in like the 39 to 49 range on average, and they went with like a $59. So
Yeah.
I really would be curious, like, I wonder, would you suggest like if they came back and redid a poll and put, say, like $49.99 versus $59.99, and ask people why, why is it worth these numbers or not worth that number? Maybe that would help them, because again, I'm the type of person that I'll take the $10 hit to get maybe 100 more sales a day,
Yeah.
because I'll make it up in the long run. Of course, we don't know what their margin is and what their cost is, but that's what I would do
Yeah,
personally, is
that
maybe.
is an interesting approach, and I don't know if I've seen that in particular, but I've seen a lot of people do different bundles, um, because a lot of times, like you will see if you just do a head-to-head price comparison of exactly the same thing, like why wouldn't you choose like the lower one, right? In theory,
Yeah.
But if the prices were different and the bundles were kind of significantly different of products, then I think you get really interesting feedback. And a lot of people are trying to do more bundles now in e-commerce. So I think it's an interesting thing to test. And, what is the right bundle? Can I get an extra $20 if I throw this in there? I may not think it's personally useful, but if
added value,
if the customer does, then, you're popping that revenue higher, right?
Yeah, added value has been around for years. I mean, people have used that. I did it back in the day, right? When I was selling my iPhone screens, there's times we would throw in a screen protector. Okay, anybody who's not been in the screen protector world, screen protectors cost me probably like 7 cents, and it's like, maybe add a little shipping and I'm up to like 10 to 12 cents, but still I'd throw it in and show it's like a $9.99 value, but I would be like, okay, but we're going to discount it to $4.99 more if you bundle it together with the screen. That was always a way to get more out of this sell and get the sell. And it shows that now, if you compare the screen I'm selling with the bundled in screen protector and the screen somebody else is selling without one, and let's say the price difference is only $5 more, but they're getting a $9.99 value of a screen protector, they're going to probably come my way versus somebody else.
Yeah, I'm sure I've done that same purchase where, screen protector? Wait, 2 screen protectors? Okay.
Exactly. The best part is, and just to kind of, don't get into the freaking iPhone business. I've said it many times, but B, if you notice, a lot of these people on Amazon, and I buy them too, they'll sell a pack of 3, right? And the price is only slightly higher than a pack of 1. Well, the way they get away with that is not just the fact the cost of it's pretty cheap, it's the shipping is exactly the same price. Those things don't weigh anything. Now, obviously, if we're talking to anybody who's selling bigger items or larger items, you can't necessarily always do that. But for some of the smaller items, like that, selling them in bundles of 3 or maybe even 4, there was times I would actually take and start weighing them and putting them in a box and seeing how many things could I fit in a box before that weight went to a certain weight that was now higher that cost me more. Yeah. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's some great info. So you got any more? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a couple more. So this is just more like, we were talking about things that may not exist yet again. And, these are, they look like 3D renders of different bags.
Yeah, different colors, patterns.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so like, you wouldn't necessarily want to just jump in and choose one and manufacture only that design. Or maybe you're going to sell all of them, but you want to know like what levels to buy, right? Like what's the percentage of.
Didn't think about that for your inventory, right? Like option A might sell, but maybe you only want to buy 10% of the, exactly. Units that you.
Like these are all decisions you have to make. And are you just arbitrarily choosing color breakdowns, right? Like,
Yep. That's awesome. That's a great example right there.
And then lastly, like here's just like a nutritional supplement packaging design. So same supplement, they're just testing different, pretty vastly different designs.
So here's an interesting one on this. First thing I noticed when you came to this page was C is like blown up bigger.
Yeah.
So it almost caught my eye quicker, but it's interesting that A1, but I can kind of understand why too. Like C looks a little more dull, so it doesn't really stand out. Yeah. I mean, I would have, A or B would have kind of been my choice personally, but I get where they're coming from that, on B, there's a lot of the way they kind of inverted the colors being kind of the magenta in the background, whereas the black makes the magenta stand out more on option A. I definitely could see where they came up with option A. Plus, I like the slim, fast, burn, fat, tone up, like on the side right there. Yeah. I think
this one's like very, very modern, like, super clean looking, kind of like a athletic.
And that's a pretty big percentage, 60%. I mean, that's a big percentage win right there.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So, and then, I just want to show here that like they do rank all of them. So each individual one will show you like, okay, so this guy chose B, then A, then C, and it was a female with this age range. So like all that data is here. You can download CSVs and kind of like do all kinds of weird analysis with it if you want.
And you were showing earlier the different filters too, right? Like you could narrow it down by age range. You can narrow it down by.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Or like, let's see what all the males think.
Yep.
12 to 5 on C, right?
What's exclude not helpful? What's that mean?
Oh, so yeah, you can go through each individual answer and say like, this wasn't great.
Oh,
And yeah, we
and
actually, if
that,
you have a lot of them that are not great, like you could actually mark them not helpful. And if you message us, we'll replace the answers with new ones.
ah,
If they're really egregious, right? Like just feel free to message us, and we'll find new people to respond to it. And so
so
you
are
can,
you able, if you filter out the not helpful, will it adjust your results?
yeah, it'll just filter it right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and then you could also just like pin things if you're not necessarily judging on helpful or not helpful, but like, hey, I like
Ah,
what they're saying here. And what's cool is that you could just grab this URL, which will have like that information in it.
uh,
And then you could send it over to Henson and be like, hey, like take a look at these 4 answers that I've pinned.
oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. So like I could
That's super cool.
just show the pinned ones. And like if I'm an agency, I could share that with my client. I could say, these are the ones you need to focus on. Here's why we're going with this decision. Um, yeah, just little things like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think I need to start using my account more. So I have used it. Just being a little busy, but yeah, I definitely need to do that some more. So just real quick question. I meant to ask you actually on the podcast, but I got to ask this question. You ever been in a dispute with your wife and settled it with a PickFu result?
No, actually,
Probably
that's
with John though, right?
maybe John has.
Yeah. No, or I'm probably between you and John, you've settled some stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we do all the time, and we do it in the team as well, right? So
Sure, sure.
we always default to like, oh, we all think this, and like, okay, fine, we're just going to throw it to PickFu, and
Nice. All right. So there's actually Justin is the co-founder of PickFu. John is the other co-founder. So before we jump into kind of like how you guys met, first let's talk about the name PickFu. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it and how you came up with the name?
sure. So let's see. This was years ago. We wanted something short. I think something short, memorable. There was some aspect of picking for you, so pick for
Okay.
you, pick foo. There's the aspect of having something foo is like having expertise in something.
Yep.
So those were kind of the two aspects. We did buy all the other spelling variations, so like pick foo with two O's or whatever. Um, but yeah, so it's just kind of fun, and it gets a rise out of people when we spell it, especially with some of our more corporate customers. But I
Yeah.
think it helps keep us memorable. I think at the time, like Woofu was also a popular brand for the surveying. I don't know if you remember that. And so it might
Have
have
you
been.
ever run PickFu's name against another name, like possible company name?
I don't think we did. I think we were pretty set on PickFu. We ran
Okay.
the logo. We've done a lot of logo testing on PickFu. We
Okay.
actually did the whole 99 designs thing. So like we wanted to dog food it. So what we did was we did 99 designs.
I've
We
done
got
that.
different logo variations. We just kept running them through PickFu to make the decision for us, and then that's how we chose the winning designer. So yeah, we dog food it all the time, and we're testing like you know when we were going to go to Prosper, we were developing all this stuff, and we were testing flyers and business cards and show banners and all that kind of stuff. So like everything that we do that's creative and marketing focused, we run through PickFu, including like YouTube. Thumbnail templates, like not necessarily every
Yep.
single one, but like you should test a template, right? Because like that's consistent.
Absolutely.
So, um,
But
yeah,
don't stick to that template too long, because then all your thumbnails look exactly the same and nobody knows that it's a separate video. So
uh,
I find that all the time is I'll jump on a YouTube channel and you look at the page like in their video section and they all look exactly the same other than maybe an individual person
yeah,
changing. And then you're trying to decide, well, nothing's standing out. So
yeah, I see.
actually a template's fine, to get going and for your first few and do variations of it. You can use a template, but just change up the color scheme, right? And
Sure.
and then it looks different each time. And I notice also like on YouTube, a lot of people like, let's say for podcasts and stuff, if you ever notice on our YouTube channels, like I'm not in the image of the thumbnail because I'm just the host, right? Like what am I going to do? Stick myself in each single one? No, it should be about the guests. So it's
Sure.
always the guest, and then that's a one way that I can use sort of a template, but have a different guest, different
Yep.
images, backgrounds, colors, that type of
Yep.
thing. So there you go. Everybody just got a little tip
Yeah,
about
that's good too, man.
YouTube thumbnails. Go A/B test it if you want to check my verification on this. So, well, very cool. Well, let's jump into a little more about PickFu. Now, how did you and John meet originally? It sounds like you guys went on a date or something. No, it's just how did you guys run into each other? Did you know each other from high school or something?
It was in college. We both went to Berkeley. We both did computer science. So like we were friends in college, and we had done a bunch of projects together. So we had always known that we wanted to start a company in some form, but it actually took a few years for it to happen. So like we both went corporate afterwards because the economy had crashed. And so, I went to HP, he went to Microsoft, and we kind of did that corporate gig for a while. And then, you just kind of get the itch. And so we up and quit. I think it was over MLK weekend. Like I think I was in Chicago. I flew out to Seattle where he was at Microsoft, and we were like hashing through ideas throughout the 3-day weekend. And then I think the next day, like the Tuesday, like we both gave notice. And I don't think it was.
Did you have an idea of what you were doing at that point, or you just it was all on paper?
Yeah, we had an idea, and that was our first business, which was Menuism, which was a restaurant review and menu aggregator. And so, we didn't know what we were like, how to do it, but we knew that we wanted to do something, and we knew that if we didn't give it 100% effort, that it wouldn't have any chance of succeeding. And so that's why we didn't go like the do it as on the side approach. Yeah. So we just said like, let's try this for a couple of years. And if it fails, it's a learning experience. And so that was back in 2006. And so, we did that. And along the way, we built PickFu. So I think a couple of years into it, we were working on a redesign for the website. And we couldn't, there were two of us, and I think we couldn't agree on something. So we're like, all right, well, what do we do? Like our friends and family are by this point, 2 years in, like really sick of giving feedback on stuff and just crickets when we email them. So, so we're like, all right, fine. We're just going to build something because that's what we're engineers, right? So let's just build a platform for getting feedback. And that's what we did. We built PickFu, and then we put it out there and just kind of let the startup community use it for a while. Didn't try to market it or anything. And then it wasn't only until like 4 or 5 years ago that we started actually pushing on PickFu. So we kind of pivoted our time away from the other business and started spending our time 100% on PickFu and just growing it and, adding features and marketing it more effectively and everything. So it's been a fun journey.
Nice. How many, I mean, it's probably more of a guesstimate, but how many like PickFu polls do you think you guys have run since you started?
Oh man, I have no idea even. I don't even think I've ever looked at that. It's thousands and thousands of polls.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably up there even higher than that.
Yeah.
What is maybe like the biggest poll because I forgot, that was one thing we meant to talk about. You can select how many people you want to be. Why don't you tell them a little bit about that? How many, like being able to select how many people do the poll?
Yeah, so the polls are pretty configurable. You start at 50 as the base number of respondents, and you could go to 100, 200, 500 responses. I would say that most individuals and sellers are going to do 50 to 100, maybe 200 if it's like a really impactful thing. But it's typically more of the corporations that are running 200, 500 just because they want to make sure they get all the data they can. And then you can add the targeting and all that kind of stuff. So the poll pricing does depend on how you're configuring it. Like it starts at $50 for 50 responses, and that's kind of like a general audience. But if you're going to go up to like 100, 200, 500, it does scale linearly for the number of responses.
What's the biggest poll you've had?
The biggest poll?
Yeah, like of people. Like, did somebody do one with 10,000 people or something? Or
no, I mean we kept it at 500 just to keep it reasonable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because if we're going to do like 10,000, like it's no longer like rapid feedback, right? Like you're doing some kind of exhaustive thing, and maybe you should be using a bigger like market research firm for that purpose. So we always try to strike a balance of like simplicity and quickness of feedback, and that's kind of the reason we choose the poll format we have with the single questions and the limited number of responses and all that kind of stuff, because I think it's the right combination of rapid feedback at certain decision points.
And what kind of advice do you give? Let's say and I'm sure this happens, people run poll, and let's say the numbers come up pretty close to 50-50.
Yep.
And I'm sure that happens. What kind of advice do you give for people that have that? I mean, if you're dealing with like a packaging and it's 50-50, I mean, do you tell them just go back and design 2 new ones and go at it again? Or what do you usually do on a situation like that or recommend?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people, well, I guess, first of all, a lot of people will come back and they'll say like, oh, it didn't work. Like, well, it did work. There's no difference, right?
Yeah.
Like you could go either way, and some people like this way and some people like this way. The first thing I would say to do is I would segment the audience responses a little bit. So what we can do in our poll results is you could actually filter by say like age or whatever, and show like, oh, okay, well the older people liked, it was 50-50 overall, but like the older people like B, or males like, A. And so that's the first thing I would do, just see if like, okay, well, if you have some inclination, if you have some indication of like which way your audience leans, like I would start looking at the breakdown of the data first, and then maybe you can rerun a new poll that just targets that, right? Because that may give you a better sense of the actual direction. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, I just tell them that like it may not matter which way. You should just decide based on the written feedback, right? Like which one evokes the feelings that that you want to portray, and kind of go with that direction. You could come up with new variations, but I don't think people want to at that point. So I think it's more looking at the qualitative, looking at the written feedback, and then splicing and dicing the data to see if there are any differences. And if there still aren't, then there really is no difference. Like you can choose either one.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. All right. So we're going to wrap it up. But before I do, anybody who's listening to the podcast, you're going to want to check out the video, because we're going to add some more to this. We're going to do, dive into PickFu and show some visuals of it. Maybe I can talk Justin into, we'll run background, virtual backgrounds against each other
nice.
that everybody will be able to see or something. So again, it's PickFu, PickFu.com, PickFu.com. Justin, thanks for being on the Ecom Wiz podcast. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Rob. It's fun.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and for more information, please visit feedbackwiz.com.